Good morning and welcome to the 21st meeting of the Milton Planning Board. If we would like to just introduce ourselves for those who are joining us, if we can introduce ourselves, members and then staff. Sean,
Sean Fahey, member.
Jim,
Jim Davis, member.
Maggie,
Maggie Oldfield, member.
and unfortunately Cheryl Tagayas had a family commitment that she could not be with us this morning. But we do have our staff members. We have Tim.
Tim Zerwinski, Director of Planning and Community Development.
And Josh.
Josh Eckert-Lee, Assistant Director.
Great. And I'm not sure if Julia is with us this morning, but no.
She's not, unfortunately, but
That's not a problem. Okay, great. I just want to make sure I wasn't missing her. I just want to say thank you that we called this special meeting following last Thursday evening. The planning board took a vote and I just wanted to make sure that there was not any confusion regarding what that vote actually, the meaning of that vote. We had discussed, Cheryl had requested that we take a vote on the referendum, the upcoming referendum vote on February 13th. In her recollection, just to review, that what her motion was, and this is coming from Cheryl, just to highlight. Sorry, one moment. Was something along the lines of, this is what she had from the tape, making that she made a motion that the planning board support a yes vote at the February 13th vote, such that we remain compliant as a community and that we have opportunity with certainty that we can work on any amendments, because that is an opportunity if we are compliant. So in essence, the majority, it was a 4-1 vote, with the majority having a no vote. And I just thought, just for the purposes of the public, and just to note it, that what my understanding and what I would entertain a motion would be to affirm and clarify that the no vote taken by the majority of the planning board on January 25th, 2024 on the MBTA referendum was to be consistent with the vote taken during the MBTA public hearing session, that the planning board supports the decision of the warrant committee to send the article back to the select board for further study. And that is just, I think that is just a simple, clarification that our taking a no vote was not just simply a no on the article, but it clarifies, I just want to clarify that the no position taken by the majority, my understanding is that that is to be consistent with the way we had voted during our public hearing on the MBTA. Zoning, Article 1. Any comments or anything that I may be missing on this that the board would like to add?
Yeah, so Meredith, I just want to say thanks for, providing this opportunity. After last Thursday, I was a little bit confused because I felt like our vote was somehow doing something that was limiting our options in the future. And as we all know, having limited options is not really a good thing. And, we've all worked really hard, all this time, many of our meetings going to midnight. And we concluded that the deadline couldn't be met and that we needed more information to our questions about the costs and the impacts of, the additional traffic and additional infrastructure. So I felt like recommending a plan, that's not good for Milton was sort of a dereliction of our duties. So we supported the warrant committee recommendation to send it back. And I do stand by that vote. But I didn't feel like I fully understood the purpose or the need of the vote last Thursday. And I felt like we didn't know the ramifications of the vote. You know, I read Peter Mello's memo. I printed out his, you know, the argument, the Penn argument he referred to. And I'm just wasn't comfortable with taking a yes or no vote. For some reason, it dawned on me that we were going to just limit our options. So I was thinking the best route would really just to recall our vote, and we should just let democracy play out, you know, without government intervention, be it local or, you know, state. You know, the ballot allows the residents' voices to be heard. So I was sort of thinking that we should just recall the vote and sort of, I don't know, procedurally, what's the best, if we just reaffirm our original vote, or we actually have to make a motion to recall the vote that was taken. I'm not sure.
To, you know, according to Robert's rules, you know, if we're following, we are, you know, within a time frame. I think we would have to actually we would have to revote it. But that would be leaving our decisions being the same, because we're not necessarily changing a position. You're saying you don't want to change the position, you just want to withdraw the vote.
Yes, because in Peter Mello's memo, you know, again, I'm not an attorney, was that it stated in its present form for 2 years absent a planning board approval. And I would feel that our no vote might interfere with that, you know, specifically coming back within 2 years. And I know you reached out to him to see if he could
did.
attend, and he was
Yeah.
busy. So without having town council here, I'm just afraid we're gonna limit our options. I just would hate to limit our options. So that's why I feel like maybe we should just, I don't recall it.
Yeah, Josh, I know you spoke with Peter, I spoke with Peter, and he was going to put something in writing, stating that, you know, our position, you know, clarifying our position as being consistent with what we voted during the public hearing. And that we would have to actually, if we wanted to resubmit a new article, that we would need to reopen a public hearing, and that the vote taken on Thursday was actually not during a public hearing. So his position was, you know, what we were voting on was actually consistent. Yes, Tim, do you want to add?
Yeah, and I actually was able to get a hold of Peter this morning, actually on an unrelated topic, and we talked about this a little bit. And I think, you know, Meredith, your characterization is correct, and I know you guys were able to catch up. The recommendation of the planning board prior to town meeting is still the recommendation of the planning board on this article. It happened pursuant to 40A Section 5, according to all the rules in state law about how the planning board is supposed to have a public hearing and then make its recommendation to town meeting. You know, my take here, and you know, I wasn't able to make it on Thursday. I'm feeling better. If you see me disappear, it's because I'm coughing. I've still got a little bit of that left. But I mean, you know, my take on last Thursday was, you know, there is a ballot referendum, and to the extent that, you know, voters are interested in the position of the planning board in order to inform, you know, how they're going to act, you know, at the ballot box on the 13th, that it would be useful for the planning board to take a position on the referendum. You know, what Peter conveyed to me is that, you know, that recommendation, you know, whether the planning board says vote yes, vote no, don't vote, no recommendation, whatever, doesn't really have any bearing on the recommendation on the article vis-a-vis Section 5 of Chapter 40A. You know, I would look at it more as, you know, we're an elected body, there's a political issue in front of town relevant to planning and zoning. You know, here's the planning board advice, opinion, recommendation, you know, whatever, you know, at the ballot box. You know, and even all of that being said, and I think if you go back and look at Peter's memo, you know, he does kind of mention that footnote in the Penn case that, you know, kind of says, yeah, you can bring an article back within 2 years if the planning board makes a positive recommendation, but this footnote casts a little bit of doubt on whether a no recommendation previously invalidates that. But I think, what he also says is the spirit and the letter of Section 5, which is about planning board recommendations and whether or not you can bring an article back, pretty clearly and plainly states that if an article goes through a public hearing process and the planning board recommends it, it can go to town meeting, irrespective of a previous sort of town meeting vote. There's a footnote in a case that can be read one way or the other, but if you're reading the law, and there isn't a lot of case law on this, apparently according to Peter's memo. So what that would mean is effectively, if Article 1 were to come back and the planning board were to say, to town meeting, yes, we think that, town meeting should vote for this, then that article can go to town meeting and town meeting can take its vote. I think, where we are now is, the planning board is in a process of, looking at MBTA community zoning and discussing, different changes, improvements, kind of further refinements, that were kind of the basis of the warrant committee recommendation, back in December. So, it's kind of, I wonder if Article 1 would even come back, or if the planning board would want to put together a different article, different than Article 1, which I think, is something that at least has been kind of up for discussion. So all of this, and again, I'm recounting, so this is, I'm not the lawyer, Peter's the lawyer, this is our conversation, but I think Meredith, you had a similar conversation. And I think, what came back was, the planning board's vote on Thursday doesn't count as, a recommendation on a town meeting article pursuant to Section 5, because it didn't, that recommendation already happened, via the public hearing process. So that was long-winded, but hopefully a little bit of clarity.
Yeah, so just to summarize, you're saying, Tim, that we can bring a new article back within 2 years.
So there's the whole crux of this 2-year thing is, imagine there's a citizen's petition, right? And no, let's not do citizen's petition. The planning board really wants to raise the height limit in, town center to 5 stories, and no one thinks it's a good idea. And the planning board has a public hearing and recommends the town meeting pass this article, and town meeting rejects it out of hand. No, that's a bad example too, because if the planning board continued to recommend it, you can continue to bring it back. I think what that 2-year ban is, if there's finality, there should be finality, and we shouldn't be continuing to bring articles to town meeting that the planning board doesn't think are good articles, and town meeting continues to reject. What Section 5 tries to do is, again, the planning board is the board that, is supposed to vet zoning and write the zoning, and town meeting eventually gives it the thumbs up or thumbs down. And so, ultimately it's up to town meeting. If we have zoning, it's because town meeting passes it. What the public hearing is and the recommendation is, and the 2-year ban is sort of the gateway to town meeting. And the key to get into town meeting is that positive recommendation from the planning board. That gets you in, and then town meeting can act how it wants to act. The other way, to sort of, quote unquote, get around that 2-year ban is if the article is just a different article. Just because it's still MBTA community zoning for the purposes of, compliance, doesn't mean that it would be considered the same article if there's new subdistricts, or, the line between the same and substantially different is not clear at all. There's no playbook on that. So really it would be, the town making its case to say that, like, look, we passed, Article 1, and then, it either went down in a referendum or whatever, and we're bringing back, Article 1 version 2, and it's got these different subdistricts and these different dimensional parameters, and we think it's substantially different from Article 1, and, it should be able to go to town meeting and be approved and authorized by the Attorney General, pursuant to Section 5. that becomes an AG kind of conversation about, like, is an article different enough from the article that, went down in the referendum, in order to kind of come back, in the same state. So those are really the two things that we're talking about is, if the planning board has an article and positively recommends it to town meeting, I think it can go to town meeting, notwithstanding that kind of opaque, unclear footnote in that case that Peter referenced. And then the other way is to change the article sufficiently that it can credibly be considered to be a different article. And those are sort of the two, workarounds, for lack of a better term.
And Maggie, just to follow up on that, what I think the essence of what we're here for is to clarify that our vote on Thursday did not change anything, and it was not a different vote than what we had voted during the public hearing. And that's where the clarification comes in, and the statement that that it is not a different position than what we took during the public hearing process. That our vote on Thursday was consistent with that.
Okay, and then also, to confirm, my understanding is, when Peter Mello went to the warrant committee back in October, he stated to them that there are ways around circumventing the 2-year ban, and what Tim just said reaffirmed that. So then, I want people to know that there is a way for an additional article to be brought back within 2 years, if it's sufficiently and substantially different of character.
Correct. And that's what Peter said. Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board?
I would just,
Sure.
I'm sorry, Sean.
No, Jim, go ahead, please.
I would just say, in light of all the uncertainty we have here, and there's no definitive ruling, there's sort of no precedent, I'd be more comfortable just voting to rescind our vote that we took on Thursday and just leaving it with that. It would make me, it would just remove any doubt. If Peter Mello comes back in a month and with a different decision, we don't open ourselves up to any just any confusion. That's all. So I'd be very comfortable just
we could also make it a combination where we could withdraw, but go on to make the statement that we are and we could not even tie it to the vote, but we could just to rescind our vote of Thursday, January 25th, and clarify the position of the planning board to be consistent with that, with the vote taken during the public hearing session.
Right.
To excuse me, of the decision to support the decision of the warrant committee to send it back, the article back to the select board for further study.
Sure.
Does that make sense, Sean and Maggie, to rescind that but keep that statement in there? Or do you think it's not necessary?
I don't necessarily think it's necessary. I feel like I like clean things. We're on record. We've taken a vote. We support the decision of the warrant committee. This vote from Thursday, was just kind of confusing to me. And I should have asked the question before we took the vote. But it just, to me, it seemed like it was unnecessary and it caused more confusion. So I would rather just wipe the.
Sean, any comments?
Well, if the purpose of Thursday's vote was, as Tim outlined earlier, to inform the residents and the voters of the current position of the planning board members, that's fine. Put me also in that group of people that didn't ask why we were doing the vote, and we could have had that clarity on Thursday's meeting. So You know, I regret not asking for clarity and maybe avoiding this meeting here today. Meredith, I'll follow whichever direction. I mean, I think you have assured us and the residents that, and Tim has as well, as has Peter in his conversations, that Thursday and the vote that Member Tagai has asked for doesn't change anything in terms of the planning board's position. So I'm satisfied with what you have researched with Peter. I'm satisfied with Tim's explanation today, and I'll follow whatever direction that you as the chair choose.
Okay. I just, I don't want it to become more confusing if we just rescind the vote. That's my only concern, and that's why I'm thinking that we just keep the statement that we rescind the vote from Thursday. And that we wish.
And I tend to agree with you. I don't know that that's necessary, but
Yeah.
Obviously, Maggie and Jim have they have full right to decide what's most comfortable for them.
And I'm fine with that too. I'm fine with just a simple rescinding the vote taken on Thursday, January 25th, as to not be confusing.
And I didn't think it through. I was just thinking about from our legal options moving forward. I wasn't really thinking about kind of like the PR to the residents section of it. So if you think it's important for the residents to know our position, if they don't know already, then I'm comfortable with adding in the statement that we stand by our vote in supporting of the warrant committee. Again, whichever way you want to go. And again, I apologize for the confusion. And I should have asked the question before, so sorry about that.
That's okay. No, that's why we're here to hear from everyone. So that would be a, just so we're clear for Julia, when she's watching the recording, what the motion is. A vote to, a motion to rescind the vote from Thursday, January 25th on the MBTA referendum, and state that the planning board supports that the planning board supports the decision of the warrant committee to send the article back for further study at this time.
So moved.
Okay. All right. Second,
Second,
any discussion? If not, we can have a roll call vote. Jim,
yes.
Maggie,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Thank you. I hope that'll just provide clarification for everybody. And Tim, I don't know if you had anything else before we adjourn. That was the only item on the agenda for this morning.
Nope, that's it.
All right.
Hope you feel better, Tim.
Thank you. Yes, continue to
thanks.
feel better. Thank
right.
you for everyone's time. I appreciate it.
Motion
All
to
right, have a
adjourn?
great day. Thank
Motion
you.
to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second, yeah, motion to adjourn.
Second, roll call. Jim,
Yes.
Maggie,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.
You too. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.